Welcome back to the women's basketball post-game report. I'm Jacob Sturm, joined by Noah Weber. We just watched Oklahoma State playing at West Virginia, and the Cowgirls lost their second straight conference game. This one in really gut-wrenching fashion. They had a double-digit lead. I believe it was 12 points, and basically let it all slip away pretty early into the fourth quarter. And the Cowgirls never really recovered from that deficit to make it competitive right at the end. Noah, what were your original thoughts from this game?
So my initial thoughts from this game is just that 15-5 run that the Mountaineers went on in the fourth quarter. It just depleted the Cowgirls, and Natasha Mack's travel, couple over other turnovers that happened during that run. The Cowgirls just couldn't get anything going. I mean, they had to go to the foul game eventually, and the Cowgirls got some garbage time free throws, but that ending to the fourth quarter, about those last 4 or 5 minutes, were just the offense was absolutely stagnant, and they had no answer for West Virginia. Anytime that the Cowgirls would do anything that was even semi-good, the West Virginia Mountaineers would come back and they'd throw a punch, and it would be a harder punch. So that's my initial thoughts from this game.
It's funny you said that because, at one point in the third quarter, I thought, oh, this is going to kind of turn into the OSU West Virginia game in Stillwater, where it was competitive for a time, and then the Cowgirls kind of broke away a little bit, and then West Virginia fought back, and it was really, really tight at the end. But in this case, the turnovers were just too great to, both teams turned it over a lot, don't get me wrong, but it seemed like the timing of a lot of those turnovers really, hindered the Cowgirls from pulling away at the time they needed to. And then when that game got close down the stretch, West Virginia was hitting their shots and the Cowgirls just weren't hitting any of theirs. And, it's going to happen. It's not like they're going to be perfect every single time they're taking a shot down the stretch. But this one certainly feels like you're a few possessions of good basketball away from winning this game pretty comfortably, and they just didn't really ever find that rhythm to get that going. What did you kind of think about did you think that the turnover disparity was noticeable for your opinion? I thought West Virginia had more turnovers than the Cowgirls did, and I wouldn't have been able to really pinpoint how many more they had, but it certainly felt like it was pretty competitive in terms of how many turnovers they had and how sloppy both teams were. So what would you think on that?
Agreed. They both obviously turned the ball over a lot, 15 plus times for both teams. But as you said, and I think that was a great point, it was the timing of the Cowgirls' turnovers that really kind of hurt their chances of coming back, because I was looking at the stat broadcast from the fourth quarter along with watching the game. And if you're looking at the stat broadcast while you're watching the game, you're going to pick up on a lot of stuff that, would just kind of graze over your head during the game. The Mountaineers didn't turn the ball over in those last 4 minutes, while the Cowgirls turned it over 3 times. Like you were saying, it was the timing of those turnovers that really messed up the Cowgirls' chances of winning this game. And it was just really disappointing, and I'm hoping to see them bounce back against the Baylor Bears on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think one other thing we need to kind of point out is that the Cowgirls weren't depleted like they have been in a few of the previous games. They had their full group of players that they would play before any of the COVID-related things happened. So you can't even chalk this up to fatigue, really, because everybody was healthy, everybody was active. They had the bodies that they could put in if they needed to. They ended up not putting in. I don't think a lot of them had a lot of time that they were on the court, but I thought, all things considered, I thought this was a pretty sluggish game, to say the least, from all parties, even West Virginia. I thought, at halftime, this score was pretty low. It was 28-25 at halftime. And that's not been a common theme for OSU. It doesn't seem like. We've seen quarters where the Cowgirls have scored basically 25 points. and we had a whole entire half of basketball where the Cowgirls were only scoring 28. And frankly, I thought it was only because they went on a mini run in that first half that kind of gave them that 3-point cushion, because they were not winning this game at all in the first half. It didn't look like. And then right at the end, they kind of took that lead going into halftime. And, once I guess that kind of was the catalyst for them getting that lead they had, but you still have to look at it kind of like, I guess, disappointing. It make it kind of seem disappointing, at least.
Agreed. And like kind of looking back on this game, one thing I forgot to touch on, just as Coach Littell loves to talk about how the most important parts of the basketball game is how you start the first quarter and how you start the third quarter. And the way that the Cowgirls started that third quarter was good. I mean, they got off to that 12-point lead, and I was thinking, oh, this is going to be perfect. He's going to talk about exactly about how he loves when these girls start the third quarter great. And I mean, they did do that, but then when it came to the fourth quarter, around that middle point, that offense just went absolutely stagnant. That engine kind of just died, and they crept across the finish line in not the best fashion.
Well, the Cowgirls' job does not get any easier. They play Baylor in Gallagher-Iba on Wednesday, and that game probably was the only one that, when you looked at this 3-game slate, you just kind of chalked it off as that one's not going to happen. The other two are the ones you should focus on. Now they're sitting at 5-2 in conference play, looking toward a matchup with Baylor to try to avoid 5-3. I don't know what to expect in that game. I certainly think if the Cowgirls play like they did against Iowa State, it'll be a fun game to watch. If they play at all like what they played like today, I don't see this game being very competitive at all. So that's kind of the outlook going into Wednesday's game against Baylor. You have any final thoughts, Noah?
My final thoughts are just I 100% think that it's going to be a different team that comes out on Wednesday. I don't think there's any way that they play anywhere close to how poorly they played today. But also at the same time, I think that they could come out much stronger than they did today, and the game might look a little bit similar to the way it did today, just where it's disappointing. And that's not because the Cowgirls did much worse. It's just because Baylor is that much better than West Virginia or the Cowgirls. But I mean, who knows? Any team can beat any other team at any point. So maybe you're Gallagher-Iba. Coach might get them hyped up before the game. They might get inspired. Baylor might have an off shooting night. You never know. The Cowgirls might be on fire from downtown. We have no idea how this game's going to look, but my hopes aren't too high for this game.
Well, I think that'll do it for both of us. For Jacob Sturm and Noah Weber, we'll see you guys Wednesday.